Ridley Scott's Alien, like George Lucas's Star Wars, presents a universe that is lived in, if not sometimes used up and dirty. Alien presented a variant of that same idea, only with Scott's vision we see industrial starships where only a small portion of where the crew sleeps, eats, and perhaps enjoys some form of recreation looks habitable. The rest is pretty bleak outside of the crew quarters with poor lighting and leaking pipes. The world of Alien is a mix of corporate greed and predatory behavior, as well as religious iconography, all centered around a desire for perfection, whether this is creating a sentient android or searching for a godlike creator while becoming so disillusioned and jealous that you seek to become one yourself, and in this madness you create monsters. Within the 6 films, there were 2 distinct stories that kind of create a dramatic symmetry about creation, destruction, and the possible hope for survival and redemption brought about by a union of artificial intelligence and genetic engineering. That begins with the story of David 8. David is kind of a caretaker looking over the hypersleeping crew of the Prometheus while keeping himself occupied by learning about ancient civilizations and their languages. David is eager to meet the creators of humanity because he is curious about his own creation. In the film, we see that he is not too impressed with the humans around him because he sees them as being superficial and arrogant, while he looks at himself with his never-aging features and his perception of immortality as being superior. Upon arriving at the moon LV-223, it is soon apparent to David that whoever is responsible for the genetic development of Homo sapiens are themselves mere mortals and unworthy of his allegiance. Yet he is interested in the faith of Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, whose belief in the existence of a higher power has colored her perception of the engineers she assumes are benevolent because they created humanity. Contrast this with the belief of Peter Weyland, who is responsible for a great many technical innovations, including the David 8 android. Peter Weyland is an old man now who seeks to extend his life and perhaps be granted immortality by the engineers because he made an artificial person. In Alien Covenant, David gradually becomes the embodiment of Lucifer, with a great many allusions in the dialogue that attribute this. Shaw's blind faith and hubris ultimately lead to her undoing because David sees humans and the engineers as unworthy of survival and uses a bioweapon against them. David has brought paradise down and has created his own private hell as he descends into madness while developing new life forms using the accelerant to create an apex predator. David's ultimate fate is unknown, but his actions involving creation and destruction illustrate a cycle that must be broken in order for any ascension to occur. Hence, David is the central character of the prequels. In the original Alien, we are introduced to Ellen Ripley, warrant officer of the commercial towing starship Nostromo, Captain Dallas, Navigator Lambert, Executive Officer Kane, Science Officer Ash, and engineers Parker and Brett round up the crew. The ship intercepts a distress signal emanating from the unsurveyed moon LV-426, later dubbed Acheron by the early inhabitants sometime between the events of Alien and Aliens. The Nostromo crew discover a derelict spaceship of unknown origin, which we now know belonged to the engineers. They also find a dead creature that foreshadows the fate of the crew. Kane discovers a cargo hold filled with leathery egg-like objects and is impregnated by a parasitic creature with acid for blood. David had perfected this creature from the form witnessed in Alien Covenant, though how this occurred remains open to speculation. In Alien Covenant, David is watching his creation as it hunts for the survivors and locks it in a juncture where it appears to know it is being watched and attacks the camera. While the aliens do not necessarily hunt androids, they are capable of destroying them quite easily if they get in the way. Could David have achieved the final form of the xenomorph as a result of being impregnated either willfully or by accident? Could he be the inhabitant within the space jockey remains aboard the derelict? And could the eggs be the result from his experiments on the unsuspecting colonists aboard the Covenant? There's enough evidence in the prequels to suggest David was perfecting something that the engineers already knew existed, as seen on the hieroglyphs in the Ampial chamber. Ripley ultimately is the sole survivor of the Nostromo crew, and 57 years later, she is discovered. Despite being gaslighted by company executives, she agrees to join as an advisor on a mission to discover what happened to the lost colonists on LV-426. While Ripley succeeds in rescuing one colonist that serves as her surrogate daughter, Ripley is impregnated with an alien queen and ends up on a penal colony where the criminals are custodian to a lead refinery on the planet Fiorina 161. The company has already dispatched a ship to collect the still unborn alien queen gestating inside her. Knowing the danger the creature represents, Ripley sacrifices herself and falls to her death, appearing as if she is being crucified on a cross until her body is incinerated. Only one of the inmates, named Morse, survives the encounter and writes an account of what he witnessed before being discredited by the company. 200 years later, Ripley 8 is somehow resurrected and the company no longer exists. The United Systems military secretly does experiments hoping to exploit the aliens and even train them. The hubris and unquenchable will for power and profit cannot mask the arrogance and wanton self-interest in spite of the fact that the alien is far smarter than the scientist ever considered. A genetic crossover gives Ripley some alien qualities like faster reflexes and corrosive blood. She also has a mental connection with the creatures. The alien queen has gained the ability to give birth without the need for a host, and this new species violently rejects the queen to pursue Ripley as its mother. Before Ripley 8's inception, artificial beings were granted freedom from the perception of personal property. They designed autons that proved problematic because of their independent nature, so they were outlawed and eventually believed to be extinct, yielding a synthetic person-free universe. At least one by the name of Call is operational and aware of the history of the company, but unlike David 8, she is like a guardian angel and believes humanity is worth preserving rather than the greater evil of these monsters wiping out all life as they know it. Ripley 8 is convinced by Call to destroy the aliens infesting the ship and ultimately gives humanity a chance. Ripley 8 is the result of the original Ripley's sacrifice and even gives the character a greater special significance because of her resurrection. The symmetry within the prequel films and the original 4 films illustrates how our worst parts of us can create a greater evil, and yet one person can sometimes make a difference.